Welcome back there, buds. Next up on the bench is this absolutely, stunningly beautiful early American full top secretary desk. As you can see, all these nice little cubbies in here, and then even have that little extended writing area, and it all just folds right back in to look like a nice little antique piece of furniture. I love these things. I think they're absolutely lovely because they look like an antique should look, in my opinion. They're typically made from either mahogany or a pine. I believe this one has bits of both. I see these quite often in antique shops around my area. They're usually in much better shape than this, and they're still only going for like maybe a couple $100, if that. So with this, it was sitting in a basement for quite a while, was brought to me just to be gently restored. We want to keep all of its character. There's a few splits in the wood here and there. Nothing's really affecting the functionality of the piece, so I believe that I might just leave those splits. It's not falling apart, other than the legs seem to be a little loose. These little supports down there, I mean, they're just nailed. So we might knock that apart and glue and put those nails back in if need be. But there's one little break right here. I might see if I could fix that, but if not, no biggie. We're not doing a total redo. This is just a quick, easy fix that any of you could do. So I'll just show you the products that I'll use, and let's jump into this old time machine. And this is actually Ben Franklin's desk, so that's who brought it to me. I picked it up in Indiana. So anyways, let's take a closer look at it here, bud. Let's take a walk in here and see what we got. First of all, I want to show you, there's just that little break. I think what I'm going to do is just hit that with a little bit of stain so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Once again, not affecting that functionality of the piece, so I'm not too worried about it. Usually if something was broken by me, yeah, you fix it. Or if it affects the functionality, or if it is really, really, really obvious and apparent, I may fix that. But for some of these things, probably won't. I think I will try to get some glue in there. Put a clamp on that, see if I can pull that back together. But then I might also break something else. So I think I might just get the clamp on it first just to see how that wood reacts to that clampage. But yeah, maybe take a look up underneath there. We got some Ben Franklin's. That's actually his old cat. His name was Sam. That's his hairball, so we'll have to clean that out. Yeah, let's just get a clamp on some of these splits and see how they react. I got those two clamps on there, and they are clamped very tightly. And I even put those little pieces of rubber on. You always want to try to protect that finish as best you can. Even with two clamps on that, really clamped in, if you look at that front edge, which you will definitely see first, you're still seeing a gap there. And I honestly don't think that this is ever going to pull together, because I think this crack has been here for a fairly long time, and that wood inside of there, it's probably been exposed, you know, a few times to different elements and whatnot. So it's just not a very even joint. It's not going to glue up very nicely. So we will leave that crack as is. No glue. Keep it all OG, original. It looks like we have that same situation up on the top here. These cracks have been here for numbers of years, so I mean, it's not like this is just going to fall apart tomorrow. This should live to see many more days as is. Even if I do glue that, you would see that line there. In my philosophy, my trick is always, you don't want to be able to look at a piece and see a repair, it should be invisible. And that will definitely not be invisible. We're just going to leave that also original. Once I got this up here on the bench, I just unscrewed those legs. You can see how this is built. That there is nice and solid, structurally sound, all put together. I don't even think there's much glue on this piece. It's basically just all nailed in. Then that backboard, they kind of cut that down in. Then that just rests. That side was nice and solid. But this side was very loose. So I used, the little nail prior, nail puller, and, just tried to pull that nail out, but I couldn't really get them all. This wood is just so dry and brittle. I'm afraid I'm going to break something. Then I just hit it with a hammer a couple of times, put all those nails, just made sure they were nice and solid, and then, now it doesn't budge. It's pretty tight now, so yeah, no need to really glue any of that. One other thing that I found, I don't know if you can read upside down, that says MAH. I would say that means mahogany. Sometimes they'll write the finish on there or the type of wood. I'm going to go ahead and say that this piece probably is all mahogany. The closer you look at it, on a lot of these, that looks like mahogany. Come on. There you go. Yeah, you can see all that mahogany there. Then these legs, get a close up. Just see all those, that grain of that's a telltale sign of mahogany there. So I guess we're working with mahogany. I'll get these legs back on. There was only one little spot that I actually will glue, and that's just this. It's loose, I'll just glue that back up. Well, I got the glue in there. That was pretty much impossible. I just popped a couple little pins in that. And then the little end pieces on that were pretty loose, so I got those glued. I guess that's all we could do for today. Wait for that glue to dry. And I guess since this will be a short video, we could just get Buck out there now for a hike and wait for this glue to dry so we can work on the finish tomorrow. What you seeing there, Buck? What you see, bud?
Okay. Okay, C O S H.
Now that glue dried overnight, I just went ahead, anything that, those hinge pieces, anything that could come apart, I will usually typically take it apart just because it's a little bit easier to work on that way. The next step, sure as you've seen on this piece, all that old mildew and all that, it's pretty built up on here. So what I'm going to do first, just clean this diluted Windex, 1-to-1 Windex water. Make sure it's the kind with the ammonia, because that will help to break down that grime. Any kind of oils really gets it out a lot better than most cleaners. We'll just start here. We'll get that sprayed directly onto the 4/0 steel wool. If you spray it directly onto a piece, which I used to do, and then you would just see all these teeny tiny little speckles everywhere. So don't spray it, because that ammonia will start to eat that finish, and it's pretty apparent. So get it right onto there, and then just, pretty lightly, you'll see any spot that has a little more schmutz than others. You just want to get that nice and clean. Probably put some gloves on. I hate when my hands get covered in all this Yeah, so just do this. Sometimes you might see that finish kind of get almost murky looking. That's good. That means that's working, and that's already starting to take off some of that layer of dirt. And you don't, I mean, you can do it as much as or as little as you want. Some people, I mean, this isn't a gun stock. I mean, some people lose their minds if you clean anything too much or do too much to it, but I don't know. I just kind of have my way of doing things, and you can have yours as well. And like I say before, on different pieces, this isn't going to auction anytime soon, and it really isn't Ben Franklin's desk, so not anything to worry about. So that's it. We'll let that dry, and then we'll take it from there. I just got to do the whole piece like that now and check back in. Once you get that all done, it will probably resemble something like that. It's not very pretty. It's pretty murky looking. You're probably going to question what I'm even telling you to do, but that's just the first step to clean it. That's not a final finishing, polishing, anything by any means. The next step we're going to do, we're going to get some naphtha and a rag and just give it one last wipe down, and that'll remove any wax or grease or any kind of like oils, things that shouldn't be there. It'll get rid of it. At this point, I also could have just used that Howard's Restore finish that I like to use a lot of times, but for this time, I think we're going to take it a few steps further with this piece, try to get it a little bit nicer than just that, because usually if I'll use that, by the way. So if I use the Restore finish, it will be because there is enough finish left on the piece that I have to work with. This piece, there's a lot of raw wood exposed, so we're just gonna try to give it a little bit of a hand rub finish back into it. After that had been all wiped down, let it dry. Now we'll just take 400 grit sandpaper and scuff it up to prepare it for our next step. You want to be very gentle, very light. This is just to scar the surface. Well, now that I got that all sanded up and everything, I figured I'd give you a next little tip of the day here for you. You take a little break, have a little beer, makes your work more enjoyable sometimes. So I'm going to spray this off here with the air hose. If you don't own one of those, no biggie, just get a tack cloth or whatever. You could maybe just wipe it down with a rag, whatever. So next step, we'll get set up here after I take 5. The next step in this process here for me will be to take a stain, one that isn't very oily. This Varathane stain is very nice, and it dries quickly, and you can put it over top of like an existing finish like this, and it won't just sit on it like a Minwax stain would. It'll just sit there, it'll never dry. So what I will do with this, just get a little bit on there, don't need a whole lot. All these light spots that might have popped out from sanding, I'm just going to give this whole piece just a quick rub down with the stain, just to fill in any of those light missing spots. And then we'll let that set up for a few hours, and then pat on a little bit of a finish. Now that that stain has set up to dry, it shouldn't be tacky or oily feeling or anything. It should just be smooth and dry to touch. Then, once that's dry, I'm going to just apply water locks. It is like a tung oil and a kind of like a urethane. That will just give it a nice top coat and lock in that stain. Any of the touch-ups I did on it, did a few touch-ups. So then Basically what I got here is a rag that's kind of like almost like a pantyhose. You just want something very lint free. Just ball it up. And I will just apply that directly to that pad. Let's work it in there a little bit. Sure there's no gunk on that pad. And we'll just take it and just a nice smooth, easy passes. And this isn't a very thick finish. And it's very oil-like. Takes a while to dry, but I like it. I think it's just nice for a quickie touch-up like this. So then I'll just let this sit up and dry a little bit. Maybe just hit the corners, the edges. And then this, we'll have to do the underside of this. So this will have to sit up and dry a little bit. And if it looks like it's on there a little bit heavy, maybe just wipe it off a little bit more. Just want a nice thin coat. Well, I let that set up a few days, and as you can see, it dried up really nice, and I just polished it a little bit with some polish. And the sides and everything turned out pretty good. The legs look great. They almost look like they were fully refinished even. They don't have many issues left to them. Everything was looking pretty good, except for the tops of these just cannot buff out. If you can see that, it's hard to tell on camera, but there's still so much separation from whatever finish or wax or whatever was underneath there. No matter how much naphtha or shellac I apply to try to create a barrier, whenever I try to put that top coat back on there, it just separates. I try to buff it out. I've literally tried everything. So sometimes you really just do need to throw in a towel. Not everything goes as planned. If you have ever worked on furniture, I'm sure you know just about 80% of the time it never does go as planned. So it's time to switch up the game plan here. And I'm going to remove that top, and I'm just going to lightly refinish. I'll just sand down that finish, leave all those nicks and dings. We'll get some new finish on that. Match it up to the base, and I'm going to feel much better about that than leaving it as is. And not only that, but that other top half that had the two cracked sides, I'm going to use the old bow tie butterfly Dutchman repair to stabilize those cracks, because as you can see, no matter how much finish I'm going to put on that, I'm going to get that. That is just that finish on there. Anytime when that crack moves, that finish just breaks. And I'll have that for the rest of its life unless I really address that issue of that cracking and I can stabilize it. Then I can get some finish on there and be able to sleep at night. So I'll get those two bow ties in there, get these tops sanded down. First thing I need to do to get started with this repair is to get that bow tie attached to the piece so I can trace around it with a razor knife. To do so, I just use some blue painter's tape and a little bit of hot glue. It's a trick an old bud showed me once, and it really sticks nice there. It's not going to wiggle around on me, and just with a quick tap it pops right off. Next step, I just take my razor knife and trace around that bow tie. I kind of angle it in a little bit just so I get that edge just inside of that edge of the bow tie. I don't want it to be exact or over You want it to be a little bit under. And now with a couple gentle taps with the hammer, it pops right off. Now I just take my chisel, a couple taps with a mallet, the whole way around the edge of this, working just inside that edge. You don't want to be on the edge because you probably go over and have too much taken off. Just work inside that edge and carve it out, and then come back later with the chisel and we'll take it right up to the edge. I continue just working back and forth with that chisel between removing waste and then go back to the edge, cut down a little bit more, and remove a little bit more waste. Now that I got that all carved out, I just need to go back and take that chisel up to the line, clean that line all out, and we're ready for glue up. Now once everything's cleaned out, we just get some glue in there, work it around with a brush, make sure all those surfaces are nice and covered, and then also get some on that bow tie. You can never have too much glue, can always wipe some off. Then like old Chubbs Peterson says, just tap it in. Just tap it in. Then I just need to wipe off that excess with a wet rag. Get some clamps on it, one on the bow tie and one across the piece to make sure that crack is nice and level. After setting up to dry overnight, I just planed it down with a hand plane. Now I just need to go ahead and get some stripper on here. Everybody always seems to ask me what type of stripper I use, like that's really going to make a big difference. Pretty much as long as you find any type of gel stripper and use it correctly. As you will see here, I'm not really brushing it on. I kind of just get a load on the brush each stroke almost and really get a lot on there. Stripper needs to be wet to be able to work. And even if you need to put more on after you see some of it drying in areas, just go back, put a little bit more on. You know, if the can says that it's a 15 or 20, 30 minute stripper, if it's dry, it's not really working. It needs to be wet to work. So just make sure it's on there thick and wet, and it'll work. One other question that pops up quite often is, what do I do for an after wash after the stripper? Typically I will just use a lacquer thinner to get that stripper off, any of the residue and any finish that might be left. Now it would be different if I would think that the piece had been finished with polyurethane or urethane. It seems that mineral spirits cleans that up a little bit better, but yeah, just lacquer thinner, mineral spirits, and then wipe down with naphtha to remove any of the silicone or wax or grease that may be in those wood pores, and you'll be sitting pretty. Here are the tops sanded down with 150 followed by 220 grit. I left behind a lot of that old stain and the nicks and dings that were left behind in that old piece to maintain a lot of that original character. The stain I'll be using for these pieces is the Varathane Premium Wood Stain, Kona flavored. Tastes good and looks good. Do not eat stain. Here I am spraying a pre-catalyzed lacquer vinyl sealer as the seal coat to just give the finish a little bit of a build that will then be scuffed down. And I am using an HVLP spray gun through an air compressor. After letting that seal coat dry, I scuffed it down, got it leveled out with some 400 grit sandpaper, followed up with a fine scuff pad. Now I'm just applying the top coat, which is the semi-gloss pre-cat lacquer. Well, buds, that's how the sausage is made. Thanks for sticking around, bearing with me through this one. Took a lot to get it done, but I think it looks a little better than just fully restripping and refinishing everything. This one still shows a lot of its character, and I think it's going to find a nice home. So, as always, if you like what you see, just give me a like and a share and a comment. Make sure you follow along all the future projects here. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.